All right. Well, welcome everybody. And Deanna, thanks for that introduction. It's great to meet all of you.
Oh, you're welcome.
My name is Jess Sangiorgio, as we said before, and I am one of the district strategy consultants here at Nearpod. I have been with the company for close to 7 years at this point, and on the professional services team for a little over 3. I am just actually new to working with the Utah territory, though, so this has been really exciting. I'm originally from Colorado, so neighboring state, and really excited to be supporting all of you. We are a small group, so I don't mind if, as we go through this, if you have any questions as we go, to please just jump on your mics and ask me. It's going to be a very interactive session. Just to confirm, we are together for about 45 minutes. Is that correct? Okay, perfect. So I will try to get through everything we need to. I'm on East Coast time right now, so just about 15 after is when I will stop. And then, but like I mentioned, if you have any questions, please go ahead and jump in and ask me as we go. The best thing to do is just follow along with me in the Nearpod lesson. Remember that you can take notes if you'd like to as we're going through this lesson. There's a quick welcome activity right at the very beginning for you to share your role. And I would also love to just know how familiar and comfortable you are with Nearpod so I can sort of adjust my instruction to meet your specific needs. So keep that in mind when we do that first activity. But it looks like we have everybody in the Nearpod lesson. If you need to rejoin at any time, the code will stay at the top of my screen, or the link will stay in the chat so that you can get reconnected and jump in if needed. But it looks like we have everybody here, so let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so here is that first welcome activity that I promised to you. So what is your role? What are you looking forward to learning about today? And even more importantly, what's your familiarity with Nearpod? So go ahead and share answers to those questions. They can just be, brief statements on this collaborate board. And you can do that by typing in your thoughts at the text bar at the bottom of the screen. So again, your role, what you're looking forward to today, and most importantly, how familiar you are with Nearpod. Are you a beginner? Have you used it extensively? Are you just sort of starting to get familiar with it? And so on. Today, we're really going to be focusing on Nearpod EL, which you all have access to through your connections with UAN. So that's really great. And so we're not really covering many of the basics today necessarily, but I do want to just kind of be aware of how familiar and comfortable you all are just to adjust as necessary. But this is really diving a bit more into the actual EL program, walking you through what a lesson looks like when it's pulled from that section of the library, and what you can expect in terms of resources, et cetera, to support EL students. Okay, great. So this is super helpful. I'm reading through these answers on the collaborate board. Okay, great. So it looks like everybody so far is pretty comfortable with Nearpod. Maybe not an expert or a pro, but that's okay. That's pretty subjective. What is a Nearpod pro? I mean, things change literally every day. So even though this is my full-time job, I'm still always learning too. So I was a previous educator myself. I taught in Harlem, New York for a number of years. And that is, the life of any teacher, coach, curriculum specialist, anything that it's always a learning process. So same thing goes with Nearpod. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sharing that. That was extremely helpful. It's wonderful to meet you. I want to save time. I would normally say we could go through and let everybody, say something out loud and do those introductions in person, but just to make sure we have enough time for everything, I'm going to keep going. But I read through each of your posts and it is awesome to be working with all of you. So thanks again for sharing. Another reminder to take notes along with me if you'd like. If you do take notes, this is something that even more experienced Nearpod folks sometimes forget. But if you take notes in the lesson, you'll be receiving a PDF version of the lesson after the session is over. And you can go back and you can see all of the slides, all of the content from those slides, active links, et cetera, and the notes that you took. So it's a great thing to have to go back and review or to circulate around to others that might need it. So keep that in mind. And we'll be sharing additional resources. And I know you have the recording of this too, but taking notes is a great option to go back and review as well. So I've already sort of provided a high-level overview of what to expect during our time together. But as we continue through, we're going to be covering these things. We're going to be talking about what makes Nearpod EL resources unique, and we're going to compare them to what you can normally find in the Nearpod library. So sometimes we have regular Nearpod lessons that then we customize and strategically place into our Nearpod EL library. And you're going to get to see the differences between those and what to find or to access in those EL lessons that make them more unique. We'll talk about how you can customize Nearpod EL resources. If you know anything about Nearpod, which it sounds like you all do very much so, is that Nearpod is extremely versatile and there's so many different ways that you can adjust it and tweak it and make it your own. And that is the same when it comes to supporting EL students too. And then creating multiple learning and review options for your students. You'll see some examples of that too as we go. Okay, so what is Nearpod EL? We used to have a number of EL lessons in our regular Nearpod library. Recently, though, those were growing and growing and growing, and we decided to make an entire section of our platform dedicated to just supporting EL and to reach EL, all English language learners, in a number of different ways. So we sort of repackaged it and made it so that there's a lot more options when it comes to the different types of lessons that you can pull. And there's a lot of really great features and ways to help break down how to teach those lessons and get the most out of them with each and every one of your students. So within this new Nearpod EL library, we have over 4,000 lessons, activities, and interactive videos that have been created to support language development and access to academic content for all ELs. One part of this is the topic bundles and content companion lessons. Today, we're really going to zoom in on content companions. That sort of lives in one section of this Nearpod EL library. Amazing lessons that are scaffolded for all the different core subject areas. They're searchable by grade, subject, and topic, so you can narrow down what you're looking for and find what meets the needs of your students. And they're also organized in bundles. So we have anchor lessons, aligned activities, and then integrations with other Nearpod content. And everything's really nicely laid out. And as you start to explore the Nearpod EL library, maybe after today's session, you'll get to see examples of that. On the other side of the Nearpod EL section of our platform is the language acquisition lessons. And these are developed to support language and learning specifically. They're searchable by topic. And so you can search by academic vocab, grammar, building background, and our newcomer essentials. I love the newcomer essentials lessons. They have a lot of VR field trips embedded into them. So students really sort of get a hands-on learning experience about visiting different places, understanding the world around them. So this has been expanded a lot, and I'm really excited to show you what to expect in here. We don't have time to show you examples of each and every one of these, so I always recommend going in and searching and exploring on your own after this PD is over. We like to say that practice makes progress in Nearpod, and a little bit of practice goes a really, really long way. You'll really start to get the hang of how Nearpod EL is organized and laid out within the Nearpod platform. So I'll show you where to access it later on, but just know you might want to spend a little bit of time searching through those lessons on your own too. Okay, so here's a quick drag and drop activity. It's actually an activity that we love for all different types of learners, but ELs too, because they can have pictures instead of words. But I would love for you to go ahead and read through these labels on the left-hand side and see if you can drag and drop which section they belong in based on what we just reviewed, okay? So topic bundles, remember that we had those scaffolded for the different core subject areas, content for language acquisition, EL content companion lessons, additional activities for practice and support. So just think about what we went over and drag and drop where you think these belong. I'm modeling it for you live, but you can go ahead and practice too. And there we go. And again, if you've never seen the drag and drop activity, this is actually one that was added to our platform most recently. We're always adding additional lessons and content pieces and activities like this one. So this was added in mid last year, I should say. And it's been a huge hit. And we love it for supporting English language learners because, again, of this visual component, not just being able to drag and drop text labels, but also to drag and drop pictures. And that's really huge for a lot of our English language learners, as I'm sure you all know. Okay, now I could flip over to the teacher side and look at what you're doing. It looks like most of you are finished. Nice work. And if I wanted to share this out with you, I could, but it looks like we're all on the same page. So let's keep moving. So I've explained to you how this is designed and organized and what you can expect to find in the Nearpod EL library. But why use Nearpod English learners? Let's think a little bit about that. Within Nearpod EL, it's all about the content, about consistency, and about convenience. We want to make sure that we're making your lives easier. I remember having to differentiate a lot of lessons and content and activities for my different types of learners. I had a lot of students with IEPs, a lot of students who were English language learning. And so that was always a huge time sink. Even though it was vital and necessary to make sure that all of my students could succeed, it took up a ton of my time and a ton of my resources. So we want to make sure that we're making this as easy as possible for you, as convenient as possible, and that there's a lot of consistency so that you and your students know what to expect. And so you're going to see similar patterns within these lessons. You're going to see the same things repeated over and over, which we've found is really helpful for students when it comes to learning this new languages and just knowing what to expect when they're going through the lessons every day. All right, now I'd like to hear from you again. So what are some of your thoughts? You're hearing me talk a lot right now, but what are some characteristics that you think are effective for EL instruction? And notice that there is a reference media here. You can click on this and you can review this. Maybe this gives you a couple of things to think about before you post on the board. But I would just want to hear from you. It doesn't need to be too long. What are some of the characteristics of effective EL instruction in your own opinion? And I'll give you a second to post on the board now. Okay, I know a couple of you are still finishing up and some of you have already posted. Want to just quickly talk about some updates to our Collaborate board. And we update these features with keeping a lot of our students, like our EL students, in mind. So we've added some accessibility features to the Collaborate board. We've added additional ways to include media, like being able to record responses, which is awesome for ELs. We've also added this view where you can show pending approvals. And so you can keep them hidden until you have approved all comments. So there's a lot of different ways to adjust settings on this Collaborate board. And we updated this activity towards the end of last year. So just wanted to briefly highlight that. Now, if you've already posted, remember you can read through others' posts and provide additional comments or feedback on them, or likes or hearts to those that resonate with you or that you agree with. So again, there's a lot of interactivity that can happen within this Collaborate board feature that can be great to support students. So opportunities to speak, absolutely. Being able to do formative assessment easily to see how the learning is going and where a student might be struggling. And this concept of think, pair, share, and write, great. Those are definitely some characteristics of effective EL instruction. I couldn't agree with you more. So let's keep going. So you said some of the things here, but let's go over some additional effective characteristics. So explicit vocabulary instruction, huge for ELs, sentence frames, graphic organizers, visual support, student-to-student interaction, and then language objectives. And all of those things can be found in our different Nearpod EL lessons. So let's experience one of those now. I'm going to just take us through the lesson. There's no need for you to actually participate in all of the activities that we have. It'll take too long, but I want to show you how these particular lessons are built. So this is a lesson on ecosystems. The normal ecosystems lesson that's in our regular Nearpod library is going to look just like this. And then the Nearpod ecosystems lesson, that is the Nearpod EL content companion lesson, is going to be found in that EL section of the library. And it's going to look like this. So it has the same visuals and the same title, but up in the corners, you're going to see that it's part of the Nearpod EL section of the platform, and then the EL content companion library with that tab on the right-hand side. Okay? So a lot of the content is going to be similar to the regular Nearpod lesson you would find in the library itself, but there's going to be some additional features and things that we've added or some different activities that we've embedded to really support the needs of our English language learners. And we're going to show you the difference between those now. Okay, so here's the ecosystems EL lesson. It starts with teacher materials and prep. So it's really going to give you a lot of information on what to expect, how to break this down, and kind of how to address learning objectives and vocabulary with your students within this particular lesson. You can always remove the teacher prep and materials if you don't want your students to see it, but it's embedded on every lesson so that you can kind of go over it and think about how you want to organize and structure the lesson yourself. So it's going to be broken down into 3 different parts: content, language, and SEL. So we're going to start with vocabulary instruction. That's how this lesson takes off. And first we have a slideshow where students can click through and study these lessons or these vocabulary words on their own. Okay? So it's going to have the word, the part of speech and the definition, and the word used in a sentence. And maybe this is something that you do first together as a group, or maybe this is something students review on their own. Maybe they take notes as they're reviewing these words in the right-hand sidebar with that note-taking tool. Or maybe they're turning and talking to a partner to discuss what these words mean. But they're introducing the slideshow. Yep, go for it.
The question I have about this is with this slide presentation, does it work with the immersive reader to help those kids with EL?
Great question. So if you're not seeing it on your side right now, right? You're not seeing the immersive reader?
No.
So we update the immersive reader on a rolling basis. It used to be that it was only on a couple of activities. We expanded that significantly over the past couple of years. It's not yet on the slideshow, but it would be on regular slides. So that would be a different option, is to put each one of these on their own individual slides. And then, yes, they would be able to use the immersive reader.
Okay, great. Great suggestion.
Yeah, and the immersive reader, I'm sure you all know, is such a game-changing tool. I mean, there's so many different ways to use it. You can activate text-to-speech, change the language, and all of that great stuff. So that's going to be available on all slides made in Nearpod and Google Slides. It's also going to be available on most Nearpod activities. But things like this, the slideshow, or like Nearpod content, like the VR field trips, you wouldn't be able to find anything like that there. And then the only other thing to keep in mind too, if you're taking like a screenshot or you're uploading any images into slides, the immersive reader can't read those. Thanks for that question. Any other questions? Okay. So including the slideshow might be great depending on your students and what it is that you're doing for that particular task. Or maybe, you can adjust this and you could put the words within a regular slide and have them be able to use the immersive reader, or maybe even put them into a slide where you can include your own voice recording, right, reading it out loud to them and explaining what it means and so on. Now, here's the matching pairs. This is a really great activity, and the immersive reader is available here for the instructions for it. And you're able to match the word with the definition. So students can review the words and then go ahead and do this matching pairs activity. Now, you might want to adjust the matching pairs to include more pictures than just text, especially for EL students, but that's just also something that to keep in mind. You can adjust and tweak these lessons as needed. So after introducing the vocabulary and allowing students time to practice, then we give them the ability to access prior knowledge and watch a video on a squirrel eating nuts. So it's going to ask some prompting questions, and then it's going to flip to the video. You always have a couple of options with videos. You can either allow the students to watch them individually or watch them together as a group. So if I select teacher plays here and then I click continue, we're going to have this 35-second video of this squirrel eating a nut as it applies to the ecosystem. Okay, so you can see I will play this. It'll be paused on your devices while I play it on my screen. And then you can always include different types of videos into Nearpod lessons, either as regular videos like the one you see here, or as interactive videos. So maybe in the middle of this video, you would want to add an activity that would pop up in the middle of the video and say, how does the squirrel eating this nut contribute to changes in the ecosystem or in the environment? And let students answer that either out loud or by completing the multiple choice or open-ended response question within the video itself. Those interactive videos are in a separate part of our platform. There are tons to choose from. You can also always upload a video from YouTube or a video file and create your own interactive videos as well. So after they watch that video, activating their prior knowledge and maybe answering some questions about it, applying it to what they're learning in this lesson, then we go into some scaffolded support. Now, here's the difference between what this looks like in the regular Nearpod lesson. Students are given the question, what do you think the squirrel is eating? And given the text box to answer. with the interactive or the immersive reader option in the corner. With the EL version of this activity, they're given the same question. They're given the option to both write and record their responses in the text box, and also given a picture as reference media with sentence stems so that they can know how to start to answer the question either by typing it or recording it out loud. So I think the squirrel is eating because, or squirrels need blank, so they need to blank. So providing them with those extra supports and resources is what makes this activity different in the EL lesson than it would in the regular Nearpod lesson on ecosystems. Now, here is another slideshow. Again, this time it's about natural selection. And then the cool thing here is that students are given the opportunity to click on this website and go to a separate web page where they are going to interact and choose an experiment for the forest. They can create different types of forests and talk about how that relates to the natural selection moth slideshow that they just covered in the lesson. This can be really beneficial because sometimes there are websites that students are used to using. And what's really great about Nearpod is you can embed anything into a Nearpod lesson. So it can become that one-stop shop for all that they need. So you can put all of these links and resources into Nearpod, and not only can they complete the activities and the slides and everything directly in the lesson, they can link out to wherever else on the internet they might want to go to continue the learning process. Next up comes sentence frames, another open-ended question. And again, you'll see some differences here between the Nearpod lesson in the regular library and the one in the EL library. So during and after the Industrial Revolution, the proportion of dark moths to light moths grew throughout the process of natural selection. In your own words, explain how a small change in an ecosystem resulted in a major change for a whole species. So that's just the regular standard activity for the normal lesson. In the Nearpod EL lesson, instead of that regular open-ended question, this time we have a drawing activity. So write the words and the lines in the graphic organizer to help you remember how the color of the bark affected the moth population. So it's not quite as wordy, it's not quite as long, and it's not asking students to write as much as they would in the regular lesson. Instead, it's asking them to fill in the blanks by either writing or adding in text boxes to explain their answer. Okay? So the polluted air made the bark darker, moths that were darker, blank, moths that were lighter, blank by predators. So we looked at the last slideshow, and we could always go back to do that again and then fill in the blanks here instead of writing entire sentences or paragraphs describing the answers to the question that was prompted. And again, you can use the immersive reader here on this activity. So we're using different types of Nearpod activities to engage our ELs a little bit more, providing them with additional scaffolds and supports, and changing up some of the activities from the normal lesson to the L lesson in order for them to have better access to the content. Next comes key language use, and it's going to give students a prompt to actually speak and talk and work on their self-confidence and communication. So this also ties in some aspects of social and emotional learning, which I really like. So it says, next, you will describe how a forest fire can impact an ecosystem and record your answer in writing. You can share your answer with a partner or record yourself saying your answer out loud. As you share, pay attention to all the new words and concepts you are using. Do you notice yourself feeling confident about your ability to communicate about this topic? That's kind of a lot. Remember, you can always adjust this if you want to, but I love this concept of SEL in action and giving students the opportunity or prompts to speak to one another and practice out loud. With the open-ended question, not only can they do this by typing in their responses and then sharing them out loud, they can also record their responses, like I mentioned earlier, and then you can actually have a window into what students did when they were working maybe one-on-one in a turn and talk sort of situation with a partner. And it has that prompt, it has the immersive reader, and it's also going to have that scaffolded reference media picture here. And it's going to give some sentence stems for students to use as they're speaking to one another. All right. So that wraps up our little practice mini lesson on the ecosystems and showing you some differences between a regular Nearpod lesson and a Nearpod EL lesson. Are there any questions about that kind of example that we just pulled from the library or any of the activities that we just covered? All right. Great. So when it comes to exploring the rest of the Nearpod EL library, we're going to find a lot of different things in there, like I mentioned earlier. So you've got those topic bundles in all the core subject areas. You have the content companion lessons like the one we just saw. We have additional activities for our students that they can access, that they can utilize one at a time. And then the language acquisition lessons like the newcomer essentials with the VR built in. I'm going to open up my Nearpod account here for just a second. So turn your attention to my Zoom screen. I'm going to go into my Nearpod library and show you where you can find all of this information. So on the left-hand side, you should now see under Nearpod programs where it says English learners. If you go into the regular Nearpod library, you can access it from there too, but it's a little bit easier to just access Nearpod EL right here from this left-hand sidebar. When you click on that, then you're going to see that there's some step-by-step instructions on how to navigate this. You can first at the very top select a subject to go straight into if you want to search for content that way. You can also scroll down and see that we give some recommendations for differentiating your instruction, supporting every instructional moment, and creating equitable learning experiences. And we provide you with some tips and tricks there. Once you choose your subject, so let's go into a social studies lesson, then we're able to actually look at the different grades and break those down. And we're able to see that there's different topics for each grade level as well. When we click on one of those topics, then we're going to be taken into the different types of EL lessons that we can find here. You're going to see standards alignment, and you're going to see additional information about how to actually teach this lesson once you pull it up. You can always preview the lesson by clicking through this preview button and seeing what the slides will look like inside the lesson itself. You can see the kind of scope and sequence that we recommend and the breakdown of how much time to spend on each section. This is really just a recommended guide. It's certainly not something that you have to follow exactly to a T. Just depends on, the needs of your teachers and students. And then again, it has recommended number of slides and minutes, a way to share out these lessons with other teachers, to add a copy of it to your library. And you do need to do that before you can launch it to your students. And you also have this teach button now too, which will allow you to launch a lesson live or student-paced. If you scroll down, you'll see additional information about what the lesson is about and some complementary activities and videos to go along with the lesson too. And then at the very bottom, you'll see some language support lessons that can go along with this particular social studies lesson too. So you might want to go ahead and add those in if your students maybe need additional language support and even some additional work with some SEL skills. I love this. I love how there's these kind of complementary lessons under each lesson in the library itself. So not only are you going to teach them this lesson in this social studies area, but you have all these different things to back them up if needed, providing additional activities, videos, and language support as they go.
Can I ask a question, Jess?
Absolutely.
If I have a teacher who has, one or two EL students and the rest of her students are not, would this be something that I would want to put in on as a student led thing for just that EL student, or do all of these have a companion that can be like, I can give these kids this one and then the EL student this one?
Yeah. So I would say it just depends on the lesson and what they're trying to teach and what they're trying to accomplish. A lot of the companion lessons do exist so that you could launch two different lessons, like you just said. So one regular one to, pretty much the whole class. And then the other two students that might need the additional support, either finding the content lesson or tweaking it slightly, or the companion lesson, and then just sharing that particular link or code with those two students that might need it. Okay. In that scenario, though, it would probably need to be a student-paced version of that lesson, just because, the teacher, it's going to be a little bit harder for them to lead two live lessons simultaneously. I have also seen it be done before where they have lessons like up on two different iPads and they're going through the slides, at the same time for both groups of students. Okay. But it just sort of depends on what, the teacher can manage and access to technology and all that great stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about this content and how to navigate the Nearpod EL library? Also remember that at the very top, once you've selected Nearpod EL, you're going to see this listed here, and you can search by topic or standard under Nearpod EL here. So if you are looking for those companion lessons, that's going to be a good way to do it by just typing in the lesson that is being taught to the rest of the class and then searching what else we have under Nearpod EL to go along with that particular lesson. Great. Okay. I know we're getting close to time, so I want to just go through the last few resources that we have here. So remember that when you are in that Nearpod EL section, you can, search by units and topics, which you just saw me do. You can go through all of the lessons that exist there and then find those additional activities and supports at the bottom of the page, which is what I just modeled for you. Then remember that you can edit and adjust all of these Nearpod EL lessons just like you can with anything else in Nearpod 2. So just because we've designed it a certain way and just because, our specialists have taken time to break this down, we also know that every student is very different. And if you want to make tweaks or changes, you can always do that. That is always a possibility. If teachers need additional supports in how to tweak, edit, adjust lessons, all of those resources live on our website. We have recorded webinars and recorded how-to videos on how to edit or adjust lessons too. So that is available for all teachers, regardless of if they're teaching regular or EL students or a combo of all of them. And then remember, there's different ways to launch these lessons. And I know we kind of just briefly talked about that. You can launch lessons for entire groups, for small groups, for individual students. It can be live or student-paced. If it's a video and just a video by itself, it can either be launched to all students or be in a front of classroom mode, depending on if that video would work better, at the front of the classroom or not. Remember that you can have lots of lessons running simultaneously. So maybe a teacher starts with the full class and goes through the lesson and then, pulls the other two students and works with them more on one-on-one version of the content companion lesson, or maybe one of the additional activities or regular lessons, like academic vocab lessons that are in the EL section of the library, and kind of works it through with them. All of those can be running simultaneously, so keep that in mind. You can have multiple lesson codes running for all different types of lessons at the exact same time. Here's another drag and drop. So I will give you a second to do this. So when might you use each launch mode? So drag and drop the learning scenarios to where they belong. There might be multiple correct answers, and then add any that are missing or that you think about that are not there by adding in your own text with the text box at the bottom of the screen. So I'll give you a minute. This is actually kind of helpful to think through, like when you might use these different types of lessons and why. And we already discussed, an answer to one of those questions when it comes to, when you have a full group of students and only a couple ELLs, what do you do there? So think through all of these different scenarios and then drag and drop to where you think they belong on the graphic organizer. All right, I can tell you're thinking a lot about this, which is great. So live participation, I see the resource room, parallel teaching, co-teaching, push in, pull out, small group. Great. Student-paced lessons for flipped classroom, small groups, pullouts, mixed levels, standalones, great. And then front of class for co-teaching, the resource room. Awesome. Yeah. And again, really no like right or wrong answers here necessarily, but just a good, thought activity to go ahead and think through what this might look like in the different scenarios with the different types of students that you have or that you're supporting. That's, again, what makes Nearpod so unique, is that versatility, just being able to use it in all these different ways and really meet the needs of students no matter where they are or what scenario they're in. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Uh-oh. See. Okay, we have one final thing to do, which is a quick time to climb. And I know we have about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to put us in, let's do sports today. Actually, no, let's do jungle because we did that little ecosystems lesson. We're going to do this quick time to climb. This will be the last activity together. This is a hit always for your ELs, for Nearpod English Language Learner lessons. The time to climb game is always something that teachers absolutely love and get a lot out of when it comes to supporting their students. All students love the time to climb and can benefit from it. So let's do this one really quickly together. So go ahead and pick your character that you want to play with. I believe this is going to be a very brief review of everything we covered. So we're going to go through it as fast as we can. So pick your player. I'm going to start the game in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Lynn, nice job. So remember to share after this what makes Nearpod EL Lessons special with your colleagues. Spread the message far and wide. Having access to this is really awesome for all of your students and teachers. So make sure that they know how to, access all these resources, consider how these lessons can support their students, and just find the best ways that Nearpod EL can work for you and for them. You can always find more information at nearpod.com/resources or /help. And that is all that I have.